Today I'm going to show you The Untouchables, a 2011 biography, comedy, and drama film. There will be spoilers. Keep an eye out and be cautious. Driss is driving his boss Philippe across Paris late one night. When sitting in traffic becomes too tedious, Driss exceeds the speed limit and begins driving at high speeds, evading other cars and disregarding traffic signs. The cops pursue him, and Driss bets €100 that he can lose them. But after driving beneath a bridge, the cops ambush him from all sides. Driss, on the other hand, doesn't seem concerned, and this time he wagers €200 that he can find them an escort. When the cops force him out of the car, he begins to act angrily, claiming them Philippe can't move and that he was transporting him to the hospital. When the authorities find the wheelchair in the truck and approach Philippe, they notice him convulsing, which is also an act. Because it's an emergency, the cops forgive Driss for exceeding the speed limit and offer themselves as escorts on his route to the hospital. To celebrate winning the bet, Driss listens to September by Earth, Wind and Fire, and when they get at their location, he shares a cigarette with Philippe as soon as the cops leave. Driss pledges to handle it and drives them away before the medical staff can locate them. This friendship started months ago. Philippe and his helper Magali are holding interviews to find him a new caregiver, but it's not going well because all of the applicants have extremely typical or embarrassing responses to their interview questions. But they're taken aback when Driss bursts in, ignoring the fact that it's not yet his time, because he just wants some papers signed indicating they won't hire him so he can collect unemployment benefits. He's forthright and a little rude, even hitting on Magali, but Philippe finds him amusing and invites him back the next day to sign his documents. Driss returns to his impoverished neighborhood house and tries to take a bath as all of his younger siblings bother him, only getting to finish in time thanks to his elder sister Mina, who is more responsible. While waiting for his mother, he spots his brother Adama stepping out of a suspicious car through the window. When the child enters the flat, he just states he was at school and leaves after getting his bag, making Driss even more convinced that he's up to no good. When his mother arrives in the evening, he gives her a Fabergé egg he stole and tells her he's been on vacation when she asks. She's not thrilled to see him, because he went missing for 6 months and never phoned, and now he's popped out of nowhere, as if her house were a hotel. She pushes him out and warns him not to come back since she's had enough of his lies and has other children to care for. Driss spends the night smoking and snacking with some neighborhood buddies. The next day, Driss returns to Philippe's house for his paperwork, and he is greeted by Yvonne, the housekeeper, who shows him around and informs him about Philippe's daily routine. She also shows him the room he would have for himself, complete with his own bathroom. Driss can't help but stare at the bathtub before being dragged to Philippe, who not only gives the signed sheet of paper but also a job prospect. Philippe wagers Driss won't last 2 weeks if he accepts the 1-month experiment. Driss is instructed how to care for Philippe after delivering his belongings to his room. He must learn how to keep his legs active, how to transfer him to a wheelchair, and how to assist him in showering and changing his clothes. Things become difficult when Driss realizes that he must put on high stockings and even clean his buttocks after Philippe uses the restroom. But no matter how much he complains and claims he won't do such chores, he eventually accepts them as part of his work. Later that evening, while eating a snack on the roof, he is disturbed by Philippe's daughter Alyssa and her boyfriend Bastien, who are looking for a private location to make out, and he kicks both of them out after refusing to share his beer. Driss soon adapts to Philippe's daily schedule, even if he makes some rookie blunders, such as passing the phone to Philippe instead of putting it on his ear or forgetting the baby monitor while taking a bath. He also learns to sort his mail into folders, most of the letters he opens for Philippe, but there are a few confidential ones he isn't permitted to see. When he finds a flyer offering female escorts, he decides to keep it instead of tossing it away, as Philippe suggests. But it's not all work in this new life for Driss. He still makes an effort to have fun, attempting to hit on Magali but failing, and occasionally calling escorts to join him in bed. After Yvonne arrives in his room to chastise him for being late, she discovers various dangerous weapons in his bag, but she makes no comment on them. Driss' job today is to drive Philippe around, but he refuses to put him in the back of a van as if he were cargo, so he puts him in one of the nice cars that are rarely used. Philippe, who initially feels this isn't appropriate, and argues they should be pragmatic, quickly becomes delighted about the prospect of a faster, less boring ride, though Yvonne remains disapproving. When they try to exit the building, a neighbor parks in front of their door, despite the notice on the door that indicates it's forbidden. Driss rushes after him, holding him by the front of his shirt and threatening him until he moves the car. Philippe is impressed by his activities, but Yvonne, as usual, is not. The pair visits a museum, where Philippe intends to purchase a piece of artwork that Driss believes isn't worth the money because it's only a red splotch on canvas. Philippe then meets with a relative, who informs him that everyone is concerned about Driss since he is violent. He's also realized he has a criminal past, but Philippe is unconcerned. He admires Driss because he doesn't pity him and enjoys playing around with him. Driss has dinner with Yvonne in the kitchen after another failed hit on Magali, while Philippe dictates a letter to Magali. Yvonne switches off the baby monitor, claiming it's a private talk, and starts to explain what's going on. Philippe is pen pals with a woman named Eleanor. These are the letters he refused to peruse in front of Driss, but he's never met Eleanor in person. Theirs is an asynchronous one. Driss teases Yvonne about the looks the gardener gives her all the time before going to bed. He's attempting to sleep when he notices some strange sounds coming from the baby monitor. Philippe is having difficulty breathing. Driss walks to his room and slowly guides him through the attack with soothing words and a wet cloth to wipe his face, unable to ignore him no matter how hard he tries. Philippe eventually falls asleep, only to awaken moments later, claiming he needs to breathe. This time, Driss doesn't hesitate. He straps Philippe into the wheelchair, wraps him in blankets, and takes him for a walk down the river. Philippe hasn't seen Paris at night in a long time, and now that he's more calm, he tells Driss that the medicine can only do so much and that he sometimes gets phantom agony. When they spot some females passing by, Philippe admits that he isn't capable of pleasing a lady due to his position, but he can obtain some enjoyment by having his ears massaged because they are sensitive zones. When the phantom pain reappears, Driss shares one of his joints with Philippe, who is hesitant at first but eventually falls in love with it. After that, they head to a restaurant and joke around while eating, and Philippe begins to reveal more of his experience. He met his wife as students, and shortly after they married, she miscarried 5 times and was diagnosed with an incurable, deadly illness. Philippe has always enjoyed competitions, intense activities, and speed, which a paraglider provided. Bad weather caused him to crash and break his vertebrae while paragliding, yet he still believes his greatest handicap isn't the chair, but life without his wife. Philippe remembers the date and understands Driss has passed his 1-month trial period and is now officially hired. But he must first return the Fabergé egg he took because it was a present from his wife. She gave him one every year, and he has exactly 25, reflecting their years together. The next day, Driss approaches Mina as she is leaving school, who is irritated since he hasn't responded to her messages except to ask her to seek for the egg. She also informs him about some cops who have been phoning their home. Following that, he visits Adama, who admits to having 30 grams on him. Driss offers to take Adama to lunch, but Adama declines and instead boards the same suspicious automobile as before. Later, Driss is permitted to be present while Philippe dictates his letter to Magali on behalf of Eleanor. He feels Philippe should be more forthright, and that this flowery prose is quite boring. He's also perplexed that this has been going on for 6 months and they've never exchanged images. When he discovers her phone number on one of the letters, he interprets it as a sign and contacts her, forcing Philippe to pick up the phone and finally speak to her outside of the written word. Philippe is now constantly on the phone with her, even right before he and Driss visit the opera, during which Driss laughs and makes light of the clothes. The next day, Driss persuades Philippe to accept an exchange of photographs with Eleanor, selecting one of him in his wheelchair. Alyssa then storms into his room while he's painting to ask for cigarettes and mocks him for attempting to be artistic. He kicks her out and goes to meet Philippe, who is currently requesting that Yvonne alter the chosen image to one of him when he wasn't quadriplegic. Right as Driss bursts in, fussing about Alyssa and telling Philippe he needs to reprimand her, she hides the photo within the escort file, which Yvonne agrees with. Philippe agrees to speak with her, but is taken aback when Driss reveals that he has been painting. Days pass, and Philippe and Driss' friendship grows stronger. Philippe buys him his first suit and scolds his daughter while Driss listens in on him over the baby monitor. Driss displays his first artwork to Magali, who slaps him when he attempts to kiss her. Philippe, on the other hand, enjoys the picture and agrees to attempt to sell it. They had a lot of fun together, doing things like getting a faster automobile, sharing marijuana, and even hiring escorts together. Philippe isn't really pleased about his birthday. Every year, he seems startled that they're hosting a celebration and has to meet with all these relatives who only come to see him on the date to make sure he's still alive. Philippe predicts that it will all be quite uninteresting. Driss searches for Alyssa, who is crying in her chamber after taking some of Yvonne's medicines, which did not kill her as she expected. She's upset since Bastien dumped her and called her a tart, so she begs Driss to talk to the boy, which he agrees to do for a fee. Philippe, meanwhile, shows Driss' picture to a relative and convinces him to buy it for 11,000 euros. Driss returns to the dining room and speaks with Yvonne, who informs him that Magali is in a relationship with someone named Fred, but that things are rough at the moment, which gives Driss optimism. As the party winds down, Philippe forces Driss to listen to some of classical music's most important tunes, but all he can do is laugh. He brings his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire after the band has finished before dancing in the middle of the floor. He's a fantastic dancer who even persuades the rest of the party to join him and dance with him, which Philippe adores seeing. Driss later reads Eleanor's newest letter to Philippe before putting him to bed. She sent him a picture of herself, and she says they should meet next week when she visits Paris. When the big day arrives, Yvonne and Driss dress Philippe in dozens of costumes until he finds the ideal one. And because Yvonne will be driving Philippe to the date, Driss spends his day off visiting Bastien and threatening him until the boy agrees to apologize to Eliza and bring her croissants every day. He also asks him to repair his hair. After that, he goes to see his mother at work, but only from afar. Yvonne and Philippe are waiting for Eleanor, who is running late at the restaurant. Philippe gives up after an hour of waiting, contacts Driss to ask him to take him away, and then exits the restaurant without knowing Eleanor arrives at the same time. Philippe brings Driss in his own plane that night and gives him the money he received for selling the painting, making him extremely happy. The next morning, they arrive in the countryside, and Philippe decides to go paragliding, pulling Driss along with him. Driss refuses to participate, but after initially freaking out, he finds himself loving the experience. When they reach home, Adama is waiting for Driss and is chastised when he notices the scars on his face. Driss still won't tell Adama what's going on in his life, so he has him wait in his room while he phones Mina and tells her not to worry before going to put Philippe to bed. Philippe, on the other hand, is still awake. After forcing Driss to gaze at a painting with him, he asks him about his family, which Driss initially refuses to discuss but finally agrees to. Adama isn't officially his brother, and his parents aren't his parents, they're his aunt and uncle. They brought him from Senegal when he was 8 years old since they couldn't have children. His original name is Bakary Bassari, but because other children had that name, they nicknamed him Idris, which became Driss. His aunt mysteriously became pregnant one day, and after his uncle died, there were other husbands and more children. Philippe, like Driss, points out that Adama requires discipline. Therefore, he fires Driss so he can be with his family because he cannot spend his entire life caring for an elderly guy. Driss packs his things and prepares to leave the next morning, after Bastien has brought his daily croissant while sporting a nicer hairdo. When Driss tries to hit on Magali one final time, she introduces him to his significant other Fred, which is short for Frederic. Turns out Magali isn't interested in men, and Driss quits up on the spot. On his way out of the house, he returns the baby monitor to Yvonne and teases her for lying to him about Magali simply to annoy him. In exchange, she sends him the escort file he started, and he is unhappy to see that the picture he chose is concealed within. Driss discards the file but keeps the photograph for himself. When he gets outside, he discovers another automobile blocking the entry, so he asks him to move even though he no longer works there. Driss argues it's a matter of principle when Adama calls him out on it. A few hours later, the two boys travel to the station to pick up their mother. While back at the house, Philippe is having his first supper with his new caretaker, who is stuffy and uninteresting, and Philippe decides to leave him without even taking a mouthful. Nobody is around to chastise him because Yvonne is off on a date with the gardener. Driss gradually returns to his previous life. He reconnects with old pals and instructs the men in the strange car not to bother Adama any longer. When he goes to an interview for which he does not have enough experience, he manages to impress the employer by referring to himself as pragmatic and utilizing all of the art knowledge he gained while working for Philippe. This results in him getting a job as a driver. Philippe continues to resent his new caregiver and is constantly irritable. When he refuses to let anyone in the home aid him with his phantom pain one night, Yvonne phones Driss and asks him to come over. That's how they ended up in the scenario in the first place, with authorities chasing them down and then escorting them to the hospital. Driss drives Philippe to the ocean after that little adventure, and the sight of the sea helps Philippe relax. Later, Driss trims Philippe's excessive beard before taking him to lunch, but he doesn't remain because someone else will be keeping Philippe company today. Driss bids him luck and eventually returns his egg before departing, and Philippe becomes concerned about being alone until he realizes who his date is, Eleanor, who is overjoyed to see him and doesn't mind the chair at all.